Alright guys, welcome back to part 3 of how to build a Buffet and Hutch. We are going to continue on from where we left off and go on with this build. As I said in the end of part 2, because of the length of the video, I had to break it up into more, tolerable lengths of video for you guys. And so let's, I'm not going to go into a big old introduction. Let's get started and jump right in where we left off. Alright guys, well the face frame is almost done drying. It's been quite a while. I want to get started on making these tops, and what I did was I went ahead and took the measurement of my buffet, and on the buffet I need to account, there's an overhang on the buffet top that we're about to cut, and on the sides I'm going to have a 1/2 inch overhang on each side, but on the front of the buffet I need to account for my doors, because I'm going to have 1/2 inch overlay doors, so they're going to be sticking out of the face frame, that 3/4 inch, which is the thickness of the door frames, and I need to account for that in my piece. I want my buffet top to be extended over those doors so it doesn't look weird and odd and everything, and so on the width of my buffet, I went ahead and added an additional 3/4 inch to, that way it brings it in line and flush with my doors, and then I added an additional 1/4 inch. So just to bring it out just a little bit more. So my measurements for my top are, the width is going to be 15.5 and the length is going to be 25.5. And what I'm going to do first is, I've got my fence on my table saw set up for 26 inches. I know I've got a square face that I'm referencing off of, but what I want to do is go ahead and cut this a 1/2 inch big, flip it over, and then cut another nice clean edge, because the banding on this these tops, and let's see if I can pull one of these down and I'll show you. The banding is going to be this, let's see here, this profile molding. It's a 3/4 inch profile molding, and this is going to be the edge banding for the top of the buffet and the top of the hutch, and I'll be cutting that down here shortly. So we'll get that done, and let me get this back up there in my rack. Get these cut, and I want to show you the way I'm going to attach. Now, if you remember, the top of the buffet and the top of the hutch have those cleating frames that we put in, that we glued in, and the cleating frames are what attach to this. Now, this top of the buffet and the top of the hutch, they're not going to get glued in. They're actually going to get mounted on the top with some screws and all. So let's get this cut down, and then we'll get her going. So, first thing I need to do is find my ears. What's that? I can't hear you. Da, 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 da. Hello. Usually, and I say this sparingly, I am looking for my safety glasses, so we'll pause here. I'll find them their safety glasses, and we will get it rolling. Oh, where are you tonight? They're right where I left them. Exactly. To the point. Alright, and I'm going to do the same thing. I need to cut down the piece for the hutch. Now, with this buffet top cut down, I'm going to go ahead and lay out my trim banding and get it attached. That way, we can go ahead and mount this to the buffet and do the same thing for the top. Put everything together. Add a set of doors, and we're about to make the doors right now. But let me get this edge banding glued on. The edge banding is simple. The banding is 3/4 inches thick. It's and this, of course, is 23/32. And so there'll be a little bit of an overhang. But then I take my cabinet scraper, flush everything up nicely, and it'll look real well. And it's real simple. Basically, I'm going to glue it on. I'll use some tape, blue tape, hold it down on there, and then I'm going to go ahead and put some pins with my pin nailer in, just to hold everything in place till that glue sets up. And it's pretty basic, so I'm not going to film that. When we come back, we'll this will be setting up, drying, and we'll start making the door parts. Alright guys, I got the tops for the hutch and the buffet finished. And like I said, they were cut down, and you won't be able to see it from that far away, and unfortunately I can't zoom in. But it's got its edge banding and everything on it. So now what we need to do is go ahead and attach the tops to the top of the hutch and the top of the buffet. Before we do that, I want to talk to you about a few things. On the hutch, earlier when I was talking to you about some plan changes on the stiles and rails, and let's see if I can turn this to you so you can see what I'm talking about here. Oops. If you notice here, you'll see some of the end grain, because them stiles should have went all the way up, and then the rail mortised into that. Unfortunately, this was glued on and it's not coming off by the time that it was discovered that it was backwards. So I went ahead and made a new face frame for the Buffet, which you'll see here in a minute. On the back of the hutch, here, I added an 1 3/4 inch piece of oak across the back. And it's flush with the inside or the bottom of that rabbet that's back here. The back panel is going to go right up to it. And what I did is to give it a little bit more support down here. And also I've got some pocket holes drilled. And this will allow me, when the hutch is on top of the Buffet, I can screw down and secure the hutch to the top of the Buffet. And if ever they need to, someone needs to break it down, take it apart, take the hutch off to move it or whatever, they can simply just remove those screws and it'll come off. Now, the top of the Buffet and the top of the hutch got this frame cleating that we made. And I'm not going to, you don't really want to glue the top on, of the Buffet or the hutch when it goes on. You don't want to glue that in place because of the fact, now I use 3/4 inch plywood for my tops, and I put an edge banding around, and of course we know that plywood is made to where it doesn't really expand and contract because of the overlapping layers and different directions. It kind of keeps it from expanding and contracting. But this cleat frame is solid oak, so there's going to be a little bit of movement, and I don't want anything to kind of hinder that movement. I want it to be able to move naturally. That's because that's what wood does. So what is going to happen is I'm going to be attaching the top with these, flathead, they're Craig screws that you would get, with the Craig jig. And I went ahead and drilled some holes in this framing. And as I drilled, I wallered out the holes, and on the rails, I wallered them out up and down, because if there's any expansion, it'll be across the grain. And on the stiles, I wallered it out this way, so that way it'll allow things to slide back and forth in that direction if need be. So now what we can do is go ahead and get this attached. And we'll do the same thing for the Buffet. Make sure that my top is on top. And simply what I'm going to do is get everything aligned in the back where it should be. And then I'm going to check my distance on my sides to make sure that I'm in the right place. Let's see here, we got 1 inch on that side. Not quite 1 inch on that side. Oh, we got 7/8. So just a hair. I went ahead and decided to do raised panel doors. For the plans call on this Buffet doors, they calls for flat panel doors. And I went ahead and opted for raised panel. So I'm going to walk you through those steps in making those raised panels. And that way alright, let's try that again. As I was saying, I opted for raised panel doors on this buffet, and we're going to get ready to start making those raised panels. What I did today, and I'll show you a little bit more of it, is I had to rebuild my router table fence, because I remember the last time I did raised panels, my fence just didn't cut it. You know, it wasn't a good fence. And so I used the idea, or the design that Steve made for his router table fence, Steve Ramsey. And I like it. It's a nice little fence. And I'll show you more about it in just one second. Alright, with this in place where I want it, I've already got the holes drilled in the face frame, and what I want to do now is I want to pre-drill the holes slightly. And I'm using the fine coarse threads, the screws, because we're going into hard, oak. And you don't want to torque this down. If there is any movement, you want it to be able to slide. Back and forth. So you don't want to torque these screws down too tight. Just tight enough. Hold everything nice and in place. One more. So there's our buffet top, or our hutch top, should I say. And that's a very secure hold. It isn't going anywhere. Everything was pre-sanded before it was glued up. And now this is ready for its finish. Before I glue the back panel on, I want to go ahead and do the finish. I'm going to use a General Finishes honey stain, and I was going to show you a sample of that, but for some reason I was looking for it earlier. It has up and vanished. It walked out of the building somewhere on its own. So it'll look good, and you'll see it here shortly. What I'm thinking about doing, and I really hate to do this, but I'm actually thinking about, to cover this end grain, I'm actually thinking about using some of that edge banding, the iron-on edge banding, and just doing a whole strip up there. But we'll see what it looks like here after everything's all cleaned up and stuff, and then I'll decide on that. It's an unfortunate mistake, and I'm not, I just wanted to point out this mistake because I'm talking about these plan changes that. And I gave you the new dimensions on everything. And I just think we'll see what it does. So now, with that done, we can go ahead and bring the buffet up here. I want to talk to you a little bit about the buffet. In the plans on this buffet, like I said, it called for flat panel inset doors. I opted to make some changes. I want to kind of give this thing some dimensions, and I think the raised panel doors will look good with the trim I chose, the edge banding I chose for the buffet top and everything. I'm doing 1/2 inch overlay, but the plans call for inset doors, and they don't call for this bottom rail. The plans that are available at the Newfoundland Woodworker that we've been going off of and everything show a top rail, 2 vertical stiles, and then a center style with a decorative curve cut at the end of it. It extends right past this bottom shelf about you know, 1 inch or so with a decorative curve, and I opted, since I'm doing overlay doors, I needed a bottom rail, so I went ahead and put in a what is that? Let's see, I think that is a 3 inch. I put a 3 inch bottom rail in, and I went ahead and matched the contour of the curve, the double curve that's in the rail of the hutch, to kind of pull the 2 pieces together. I gave you the new measurements for everything earlier, and this face wasn't glued on when I discovered the change, so it is done properly where the rails go into the stiles, and the stiles run the full length and everything. On the back of this, and the plans don't call for this either, I'm all about sturdying things up, you know, and just making things tight and right. So I put a 2.5 inch oak board down here. I screwed it in with crack screws, and let's see if I can trim this up so you can see. Well, you won't be able to see, but it's flush with the back all the way across, and also by doing that, it gave me a place where my panel will sit in. And I'm going to, I talked earlier in the plans, or earlier in the video, part 1, about running an oak panel all the way up. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and put a back on this, and then a back on the hutch. That way, if ever they need to break this piece down, you know, and take the hutch off the buffet to move it or what have you, they're able to do that, and it's 2 separate components instead of making it 1. I wanted to make it 1. I thought it's only 5 foot tall. 2 hefty men could move it no problem, but you know, I want to go ahead and do it right. Need to clean this up a little bit, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to install some blocks in the corners, the 4 corners, and this isn't in the plans either. These are just changes that I'm making, and I'm making you aware of it. And I'm going to be putting these little levelers, these feet levelers, so that way, because as you know, there really isn't a flat level place anywhere in any house in the world. You know, with carpets and things like that, things tend to wobble and tilt and all. I want to give the opportunity to level or balance this out, depending on, I don't want someone to have to, as Dwayne Eller and I were discussing, I don't want someone to have to, you know, move it to a certain spot and it has to be in that spot because that's the only level spot on the floor where it will sit. I want them to be able to place it anywhere they want, so I'm putting in these little level feet. So I'll be putting blocks in here that the feet will go into, screw into. And I just wanted to let you know about that. It's these little things, the little details, you know, they're not in the plans, but it's things that you need to think about when you're building yours. Is think about things like that, about the feet, or you know, about the back support. This just gives it, it just makes it a solid base. Pulls everything together, keeps everything nice and, you know, sturdy, and it just makes it a solid piece of furniture. You know, it's oak, but we're using oak plywood for the sides, and then solid oak for, you know, the face frames and the doors and everything. But this just pulls everything together, tightens it up, and just gives it a little bit of, you know, stoutness to it. So with that, what we got to do now, I'll turn this around. I haven't drilled these holes yet. We're going to go ahead and drill them now so you can see what I'm talking about and what I'm doing. On the stiles, on the stiles, I'm going to go ahead and when I make my holes, I'm going to wobble them out in this direction. I'll put a block back here so it doesn't blow out the back. And then on the rails, I'm going to wall them in this direction with, you know, across the grain. The placement of these holes aren't critical, but with this being such a big piece, I went ahead and I've got 2 on each stile and then 3 on each rail, and that way it'll pull everything down nice and snugly. So get everything into position here. And on this, see, can you see that? Like I said, the back of the top that we're getting ready to screw on is flush with the back of the, whoops, one of my clamps. I'll fix that. And then we want to go ahead, as we did before, and make sure that we are even on both sides. And what do we have here? 7/8. And it'll take some finagling, you know, to get it exactly. You want it the same distance. On all 4 sides. That looks to be about right. Alright, very nice. Very, very nice. Okay. So now with that in place, we can go ahead and screw everything. Let's see here. 25/16. Moved it a little bit, so I'm going to check my measurements one more time. All right. I'm going to go ahead and pre-drill these a little. When you're pre-drilling, make sure you do not go to the top. That is the last thing you want to do, is to go through the top. Like I said, you don't want to torque this down. It's nice and snug. And you know, you can even do this with you know, a hand screwdriver. And if you're worried you might blow, you know, through it or, you know, torque it down too much with the drill, I've just gotten used to this little Porter cable drill. And it's pretty easy to control the speed on it. All right, a moment of truth. Very nice. Clean it up, a little bit of stain, and good to go. Get our doors, we're going to make our doors right now and get them put on. And get this bad boy together so I can get this video out to you. Alright, so just to recap everything, we changed just, I'm sorry I'm repeating myself, but remember from the plans we changed the layout of the rails and stiles. The measurements and everything changed, you know, to correct them, and I gave you those measurements. You can refer back into the video with them. I'm doing overlay doors, and if you do decide to do overlay doors, you can do the flat panel overlay versus the flat panel inset that's in the plan. You can still use a flat panel door and do an overlay, like a 1/2 inch overlay. But if you do, you got to add a bottom rail. You can decide, you know, to opt to do, you know, something, a little decorative design or rosette or what have you. The support in the back. And, you know, if you wanted to, some of the options, you could even put a shelf in here. I'm going to leave my buffet open, you know, for storage and stuff. But you could even, you know, drill you some shelf pinholes and put you an adjustable shelf in there if you wanted. And, I mean, there's so many different options and variables. Alright guys, once again, we're going to end part 3 here. And stay tuned for part 4.